Kim Tae-ho stepped off the transport ship and looked around the massive space station. The place was huge, bigger than any building he had ever seen on Earth. Metal walls stretched up so high he could not see the ceiling. Strange lights blinked everywhere, and the air smelled different. It smelled clean but cold like a hospital. Other beings walked past him and none of them looked human. Some were tall and made of what looked like crystal. Others had too many arms or legs. A few floated in the air without touching the ground. They all stared at him as he walked by, carrying his small bag of things from Earth. Tae-ho was not very tall even for a human. Back home, people sometimes called him short. Here among these giant aliens, he felt even smaller, but he had worked hard to get this job. He was a scientist who studied alien life, and this was his chance to learn about real aliens. A tall creature made of blue crystal walked up to him. Her body sparkled in the station lights and her voice sounded like breaking glass when she spoke. "You must be the human," she said. Her tone was not friendly. "I am Dr. Veltara. I run the science department here. Follow me." Tae-ho followed her through long hallways. The walls were covered with screens showing information he could not read. Other aliens stopped their work to stare at him. Some pointed and whispered to each other. None of them looked happy to see him. "Your kind is new to space," Dr. Veltara said as they walked. "Very new. Most of us have been traveling between stars for thousands of years. Humans have barely left their home planet." They entered a large room filled with computers and strange machines. About 20 different aliens were working at various stations. When Tae-ho walked in, they all stopped and looked at him. "Everyone, this is Kim Tae-ho from Earth," Dr. Veltara announced. "He will be working with us for the next year." A huge creature with thick gray skin and massive muscles stood up from his chair. He was twice as tall as Tae-ho and looked like he could break a human in half with his bare hands. "This is Commander Braktor," Dr. Veltara said. "He handles security for our research missions." Commander Braktor looked down at Tae-ho and shook his head. "Why did they send us such a weak creature?" he asked in a deep, rumbling voice. "Humans look like they would break if you touched them too hard." Another alien laughed. This one was thin and moved like a snake. His skin was smooth and green and his eyes were yellow. "I am Ambassador Zilthek," the snake-like alien said. "I speak for the hegemony in this sector. We have heard about humans. Your species only discovered fire a few thousand years ago, correct? Most children of other species learn more science than that." More aliens in the room started laughing. Tae-ho felt his face get hot with anger, but he stayed quiet. His teacher back on Earth, Professor Park Soo-jin, had warned him this might happen. "Ignore them," she had told him before he left. "Show them what humans can do through your work, not your words." Dr. Veltara raised one crystal hand and the room got quiet. "We have important work to do," she said. 3 days ago, we detected a strange signal from the Crimson Nebula. No one has ever explored that area because of the dangerous energy storms there." She pressed a button, and a large screen showed a picture of a red cloud in space. It looked angry and wild, with lightning flashing inside it. "The signal repeats every 6 hours," Dr. Veltara continued. "Our computers say it might be from some kind of machine, but we are not sure. We need to study it more." Tae-ho raised his hand. Everyone looked at him with surprise. "Yes?" Dr. Veltara asked. "May I see the signal data?" Tae-ho asked. "Sometimes patterns are easier to spot if you look at them differently." The room exploded with laughter. Commander Braktor laughed so hard his whole body shook. "The human thinks he can solve what our best scientists cannot," Braktor said. "Humans are barely evolved apes. What could they possibly understand about advanced signals?" Ambassador Ziltek smiled, showing sharp teeth. "Perhaps we should let him try," he said in a voice like silk. "It will be good entertainment to watch him fail." Dr. Veltara looked annoyed. "The signal has been analyzed by the smartest beings in the galaxy," she told Tae-ho. "Our computers are more advanced than anything on your primitive planet. If we cannot solve it, a human certainly cannot." But one alien in the corner spoke up. She had many long arms like tentacles and kind eyes. "My name is Kixandra," she said. "I navigate ships for the Coalition. Sometimes a fresh view helps find new answers. Maybe we should let him look." Dr. Veltara made a sound like breaking glass. "Fine," she said. "But do not waste our time with human superstitions or wild guesses." She gave Tae-ho a small computer pad with the signal data on it. The other aliens went back to their work, but Tae-ho could feel them watching him from the corners of their eyes. Tae-ho found an empty desk in the corner of the room. He started looking at the signal information. The numbers and patterns were complex, but something about them looked familiar. Back on Earth, he had studied how different species communicated. He had learned that intelligence often created similar patterns, even in very different species. Hours passed. The aliens in the room slowly left for their meals and rest time. Soon only Tejo remained, still staring at the data. The signal was not random. It had structure, like a language. But more than that, it had something else. The mathematical sequences were not just communication. They were old, very old. The pattern showed a deep understanding of the universe that took millions of years to develop. As Tejo worked, he started to see something that the alien computers had missed. The signal was not just coming from empty space. It was coming from something huge hidden in the nebula, something that had been there for a very long time. His hands shook as he ran the calculations again. If he was right, this was not just a signal. This was a message from something ancient and intelligent, something that had been waiting in the red storms of the Crimson Nebula for someone to find it. But who would believe him? He was just a human, a member of the youngest species in the galaxy. The other aliens thought humans were stupid and weak. They would laugh at him again if he told them what he had found. Tejo saved his work on the computer pad and looked around the empty room. Tomorrow he would have to decide whether to share his discovery or keep working alone. Either way, he knew his life was about to change forever. Outside the windows of the space station, the stars shined cold and distant. Somewhere among them, in a cloud of red storms, something very old was waiting. For 3 days, Tejo worked alone on the signal. He barely slept or ate. Every time he looked at the data, he saw more patterns that others had missed. The signal was definitely coming from something inside the Crimson Nebula, something huge and old. On Earth, humans had learned to find patterns in nature. They could track animals by looking at broken twigs and footprints. They could predict weather by watching clouds. Tejo used these same skills to study the alien signal. The alien computers were very smart, but they only looked for patterns they already knew. Humans looked for patterns differently. They used intuition and creativity along with logic. Finally, Tejo was ready to share what he had found. He walked into the science lab where Dr. Veltara was working with several other aliens. "Dr. Veltara," he said, "I think I know what is sending the signal." The crystal alien looked up from her work. Her face showed annoyance. "Human, you have been playing with that data for days. Our analysis is complete. The signal comes from a natural phenomenon in the nebula." "No," Tejo said. "It comes from a ship. A very large ship." The room became quiet. Then Commander Bractor started laughing again. "A ship?" Bractor said. "There is nothing in that nebula but storms and radiation. No ship could survive there." "The ship is not just surviving," Tejo explained. "It is hiding. The storms are not natural. They are being created by the ship to hide itself." Ambassador Zilthek slithered closer. "Human, your species has been in space for less than 100 years. What could you possibly know about advanced technology?" Tejo pulled out his computer pad and showed them his work. "Look at these patterns," he said. "The signal repeats every 6 hours, but not exactly. There are small changes each time. Those changes follow mathematical rules." Dr. Veltara looked at the screen. Her crystal face showed no emotion. "These are meaningless numbers. You are seeing patterns that do not exist." "But they do exist," Tejo insisted. "And they prove someone is controlling the signal. Someone very intelligent." Kixandra moved closer with her tentacle arms. She was the only alien who had been kind to Tejo. "Show me," she said gently. Tejo pointed to different parts of the data. "See here? The mathematical sequences get more complex over time. That means whoever is sending the signal is testing us. They want to see if we are smart enough to understand." "This is human imagination," Dr. Veltara said firmly. "Your species sees faces in clouds and thinks rocks look like animals. You find patterns where none exist." But Kixandra studied the data more carefully. Her many eyes moved back and forth across the screen. After several minutes, she looked up with surprise. "He might be right," she said slowly. "I have never seen analysis like this, but the logic is sound." Commander Bractor stepped forward, towering over Tejo. "Even if there is a pattern, so what? One old ship in a dangerous nebula is not worth our time." "It is not just old," Tejo said. "According to my calculations, the ship is enormous. Bigger than this entire space station, maybe bigger than a small moon." The aliens looked at each other. Dr. Veltara made her glass-breaking sound again. "This is ridiculous," she said. "No civilization builds ships that large. It would be impossible." "Not impossible," Kixandra said quietly. "Just very difficult. And very expensive." Word of Teho's discovery spread through the space station. Soon other department heads came to look at his data. Most of them laughed and walked away, but a few seemed interested. Finally, the station commander called a meeting. All the senior staff gathered in a large conference room. Teho sat at one end of a long table, feeling very small among the giant aliens. The station commander was an ancient alien whose species looked like living metal. When he spoke, his voice sounded like machinery. "The human has presented an interesting theory," the commander said. "The Coalition Council has reviewed his work. They want to investigate." Ambassador Zilthek hissed with displeasure. "This is a waste of resources. We should not risk lives and ships based on human guesswork. However," the commander continued, "they have approved a small reconnaissance mission. If there is something in the nebula, we should know what it is." Dr. Veltara's crystal body flashed with angry light. "Who will lead this mission?" "Captain Morgeth will command the expedition ship," the commander said. "The human will join as an observer." Captain Morgeth was a large reptilian alien with scales and sharp teeth. He looked at Teho with cold yellow eyes. "I do not like taking humans on dangerous missions," Captain Morgeth said. "They are fragile. If something goes wrong, I do not want to waste time protecting him." "I can take care of myself," Teho said quietly. Captain Morgeth laughed, showing all his sharp teeth. "Human, I have fought in space battles for 50 years. You are barely out of your mother's egg. Stay quiet and try not to get in the way." Ambassador Zilthek smiled his unpleasant smile. "This mission will be educational for the human. He will learn how wrong his primitive theories can be." 3 days later, Teho stood in the docking bay next to the expedition ship. It was called the Wanderer, and it was designed for dangerous missions. The hull was thick and strong, and the engines were powerful enough to escape most threats. The crew was small but experienced. Captain Morgeth commanded the ship. Science Officer Nithara was an energy being who glowed with soft blue light. Security Chief Wolden was even bigger than Commander Braktor, with arms like tree trunks and a gentle voice that surprised everyone. "Welcome aboard, human," Security Chief Woldan said as Teho climbed into the ship. "I have read your analysis. It is very creative." Teho was surprised. This was the first time any alien besides Kixandra had said something nice about his work. "Thank you," Teho said. "Do not thank him yet," Captain Morgeth said from the pilot's seat. "Wait until we return safely." "If we return safely." The Wanderer left the space station and headed toward the Crimson Nebula. As they traveled, Teho watched the red cloud grow larger on the view screen. Lightning flashed inside it like an angry storm, and strange energy readings made the ship's instruments beep warnings. "Are you sure about this, human?" Science Officer Nithara asked. Her glowing form pulsed with nervous energy. "My sensors cannot penetrate those storms. We will be flying blind." Teho looked at the data on his computer pad one more time. All his calculations pointed to the same conclusion. Something very large and very old was waiting for them inside the red storms. "I am sure," he said, though his voice shook a little. Captain Morgeth turned the ship toward the nebula entrance. "Then let us see what your human intuition has found for us," he said. "But remember, if you are wrong, we might all die in those storms." The Wanderer disappeared into the swirling red clouds, carrying them toward a discovery that would change everything. The Wanderer shook violently as it entered the Crimson Nebula. Red lightning crashed against the ship's shields, and the hull groaned under the pressure. Warning alarms rang throughout the bridge. "Shields at 60% and falling," Science Officer Nithara reported. Her blue glow flickered with each energy blast. "These storms are stronger than anything in our databases." Captain Morgeth gripped the controls tightly with his scaled hands. "Navigation is completely blind," he said. "Our sensors cannot see anything through this energy soup." Teho watched the instruments fail one by one. The ship's advanced alien technology was no match for the chaotic storms. They were flying deeper into the nebula with no way to see where they were going. "Maybe we should turn back," Science Officer Nithara suggested. "This is too dangerous." "No," Captain Morgeth said firmly. "I will not return to the station empty-handed. That would prove the human was wrong." But as they flew deeper, their situation became worse. The main engine started making strange noises. The life support systems flickered. Even the lights on the bridge began to dim. Security Chief Woldan looked at Tejo with concern. "Human, are you certain something is out here? Because if not, we will die in these storms." Tejo closed his eyes and tried to think like his ancestors. Before humans had computers and machines, they navigated by watching the stars and feeling the wind. They survived by trusting their instincts. "The storms are not random," Tejo said suddenly. "They have a pattern." "What do you mean?" Captain Morgoth asked. Tejo pointed to the energy readings on the broken instruments. "Look at how the lightning moves. It is not hitting us by accident. The storms are being controlled." "That is impossible," Science Officer Nithara said. "No one can control something this massive." "Someone can," Tejo said. "And they are testing us. The storms get weaker when we fly in certain directions." Captain Morgoth looked skeptical, but their ship was dying around them. He had no choice but to listen. "Which direction?" Tejo studied the pattern of energy strikes. Like tracking an animal through the forest, he looked for the path that made sense. "There," he said, pointing to what looked like the most dangerous part of the storm. "Fly into the center." "That will kill us," Science Officer Nithara said. "No," Tejo replied. "That is where we are supposed to go." Captain Morgoth hesitated for a moment. Then he turned the ship toward the center of the storm. Immediately the lightning strikes became less violent. The warning alarm stopped ringing. "How did you know?" Security Chief Woldan asked with amazement. "My people learned to read the signs that nature gives us," Tejo explained. "This storm is not natural, so someone is giving us signs." As they flew deeper, the red clouds began to clear. And then they saw it. The ship was enormous. It was longer than 10 space stations placed end to end. Its hull was dark and covered with strange organic patterns that seemed to move in the light. The design was unlike anything any of them had ever seen. "By the ancient gods," Captain Morgoth whispered. "What is that thing?" "It is beautiful," Science Officer Nithara said. Her glow brightened with excitement. "And very old. My sensors say it has been here for millions of years." The massive ship drifted silently in the eye of the storm. No lights showed from its windows. No energy readings came from its engines. It looked dead, but somehow Tejo knew it was not. "We should scan it for threats," Security Chief Woldan said. "No," Tejo said quickly. "Do not scan it with weapons. That would be rude." Captain Morgoth laughed. "Rude? Human, it is a dead ship. You cannot be rude to a dead ship." But as soon as their weapons scanners touched the ancient vessel, it began to change. Lights started glowing along its hull. The organic patterns moved faster, like a heartbeat, and deep inside the ship something was waking up. "Life signs," Science Officer Nithara reported with shock. "Multiple life signs. Very large." "How large?" Security Chief Woldan asked, reaching for his weapons. "Larger than any known species," she replied. "And getting bigger." A massive door opened on the side of the ancient ship. It was big enough for the Wanderer to fly through. "It wants us to enter," Tejo said. "Absolutely not," Captain Morgoth said. "We are not flying into an unknown alien ship." But the storms around them were getting stronger again. The ancient ship was giving them a choice: enter or be destroyed by the lightning. "We have no choice," Security Chief Woldan said. "Our shields cannot survive another storm like that." Captain Morgoth cursed in his native language, but he flew the Wanderer into the alien ship. The door closed behind them with a sound like thunder. They found themselves in a massive docking bay. The walls were covered with symbols that glowed with soft light. The air was breathable and gravity felt normal. "Someone wanted us to come here," Tejo said. They suited up and left their ship. The docking bay was so large that their voices echoed for several seconds. Everything was built for beings much larger than any of them. As they walked deeper into the ship, the symbols on the walls began to glow brighter. It was as if the ship was leading them somewhere specific. They found corridors that were wide enough for small vehicles, rooms that could hold thousands of beings, and everywhere the same organic patterns that looked almost alive. Finally, they reached a massive chamber at the heart of the ship. In the center stood something that looked like a giant cocoon or egg. It was twice as tall as Security Chief Woldan, and covered with the same organic patterns as the ship walls. "What is it?" Science Officer Nithara asked. Before anyone could answer, the cocoon began to crack. Bioluminescent fluid leaked out, glowing like liquid stars. The air filled with a sweet smell that made them all feel strange. "We should leave," Captain Morgoth said, backing toward the exit. But it was too late. The cocoon split open completely and something stepped out. The creature was enormous, standing nearly 4 meters tall. Its body was covered with natural armor that looked like black metal. It had powerful arms ending in sharp claws, and its head was crowned with spikes. When it opened its mouth, they could see multiple rows of razor-sharp teeth. But the most terrifying thing about the creature was its eyes. They were ancient and intelligent, showing millions of years of knowledge and experience. This was a being that had ruled the galaxy when their species were still learning to make fire. The creature looked at each of them in turn. Captain Morgeth tried to draw his weapon, but the creature moved faster than lightning and knocked it from his hand without hurting him. Science Officer Nithara's glow flickered with terror. Security Chief Wuldan stood perfectly still, knowing that any sudden movement might trigger an attack. But when the creature's eyes settled on Teho, something unexpected happened. The ancient being tilted its massive head and made a sound that might have been surprise. It stepped closer to Teho, towering over the small human. Teho wanted to run, but something told him to stand still. The creature leaned down and sniffed the air around him. Then, in a voice like distant thunder, the creature spoke in broken coalition standard. "You, small one, you think like the hunt." The others stared in shock. The creature was not attacking. It was talking, and it was talking to Teho. The massive creature studied Teho with eyes that held the wisdom of ages. When it spoke again, its voice was deep and careful, like someone learning a new language. "I am Korthmak," the creature said, "last of the Vorthani who wake. You found us, small hunter. How?" Captain Morgeth stepped forward, trying to look brave despite his fear. "I am Captain Morgeth of the coalition ship Wanderer. We demand to know." Korthmak turned his massive head toward the reptilian captain. His eyes narrowed dangerously. "You demand?" he said. "Prey animals do not make demands of Vorthani." "Prey animals?" Captain Morgeth repeated, insulted. "Yes," Korthmak said simply. "Your species? Herbivores once, ate plants, ran from danger, only learned to fight when cornered." Science Officer Nithara flickered with nervous energy. "How can you know that?" "You have been asleep for millions of years," Korthmak finished. "But eyes tell truth. Body tells truth. You move like prey, think like prey." He turned back to Teho. "But you different. You move like hunter. Think like hunter." He leaned closer. "How did you find hidden ship?" Teho's voice shook when he answered, but he tried to stay calm. "I looked for patterns, like tracking an animal through the forest." Korthmak's eyes widened with what might have been excitement. "Yes, you understand hunt. Other coalition species, they use machines to think. Computers, technology, but you use..." He tapped his massive head. "Hunter mind." Security Chief Wuldan stepped closer, his deep voice respectful but cautious. "What are the Vorthani? We have no records of your species in our databases." Korthmak stood to his full height, and they all had to look up to see his face. "We were apex predators, rulers of galaxy before your species existed. Perfect hunters. Nothing could escape us. Nothing could defeat us. What happened to you?" Teho asked. Korthmak was quiet for a long moment. When he spoke again, his voice carried deep sadness. "We became too perfect, too powerful. Other species fled to distant stars to escape us. Galaxy became empty, lonely." He gestured to the enormous ship around them. "So we chose sleep. Wait for galaxy to grow. Wait for species worthy of respect." Captain Morgeth could not hide his disbelief. "You chose to sleep? You gave up ruling the galaxy?" "Power without purpose is meaningless," Korthmak said. "Vorthani learned this truth. We could hunt anything, kill anything. But what is point of hunt with no worthy prey?" Science Officer Nithara's glow pulsed with curiosity. "Why did you wake up now?" Korthmak pointed one massive claw at Teho.
"Because this one called to us."
His mind touched ours through signal. "First time in millions of years we felt kinship." "Kinship," Captain Morgeth said. "With a human? That is impossible. Humans are weak, small. They have no claws or fangs." Korthmak made a sound that might have been laughter. "You think hunting is about claws and fangs? You understand nothing." He walked over to a wall panel and touched it. The chamber filled with holographic images showing various hunting scenarios. A prey animal hiding in thick brush, a predator tracking through snow, a pack working together to surround their target. "Solve," Korthmak commanded. Captain Morgeth studied the images but looked confused. Science Officer Nithara tried to use her energy abilities to analyze the scenarios, but nothing happened. Security Chief Woldon examined each situation carefully but shook his head. These are primitive hunting problems, Captain Morgeth said. We are advanced civilizations. We do not need to hunt for food. But Tejo looked at the images and saw the patterns immediately. In the first scenario, he pointed to where the prey would run when startled. In the second, he showed how the predator would use wind direction to avoid being smelled. In the third, he explained how the pack would position themselves to cut off all escape routes. With each correct answer, Korthmak's eyes grew brighter. The other coalition members watched in amazement as Tejo solved problems they could not even understand. You see, Korthmak said to the others. This one thinks like Vorthani. Sees patterns, understands hunt, but why? Security Chief Woldon asked. What makes humans different? Korthmak touched another panel and new images appeared. These showed the evolutionary history of various species. Most of the coalition races had evolved from creatures that ate plants or insects. They developed technology to overcome their natural weaknesses. Your species learned to be smart because you were prey, Korthmak explained. Intelligence helped you hide better, build better tools to protect yourselves. Then he showed images of early humans. They were small and weak compared to the giant predators of ancient Earth. But they were working together using tools and hunting much larger animals. Humans learned to be smart because they were hunters, Korthmak said. Intelligence helped them hunt better, plan better attacks, work together as pack. That is why human and Vorthani think alike. Both apex predators. Both use mind as greatest weapon. Captain Morgeth shook his head stubbornly. Humans are not apex predators. Look at him! He is small and weak. Korthmak turned to face the reptilian captain fully. His voice became dangerous. You think apex predator means biggest? Strongest? You understand nothing about hunt. He gestured to Tejo. This one found us when your best scientists could not. Guided you through storms that would destroy most ships. Solved hunting problems that confused you. Korthmak's voice grew louder. Apex predator is not about size. He is about mind. About understanding. About patience and wisdom and working together. He pointed to each coalition member in turn. You run from danger. You avoid conflict. You think like prey because you are prey. But humans... He looked at Tejo with something like pride. Humans think like hunters. Science Officer Nithara flickered with sudden understanding. That is why they adapted so quickly to space travel. Why they explore dangerous places others avoid. Yes, Korthmak said. Vorthani became solitary hunters, alone, perfect but isolated. Humans became pack hunters. Together. Strong because of unity. He knelt down so he was closer to Tejo's height. My species made mistake. We forgot that greatest hunts are shared hunts. Greatest victories are pack victories. Korthmak extended one massive hand toward Tejo. You are young kin, small hunter. Your species has what Vorthani lost. What we gave up when we chose sleep. Tejo looked at the enormous clawed hand. He was still terrified, but he also felt something else. Recognition. Understanding. This ancient predator saw something in humanity that even humans did not fully understand. Slowly, Tejo reached out and placed his small human hand in Korthmak's massive palm. We have much to learn from each other, Korthmak said. Old hunters and young hunters together. The chamber filled with a low humming sound and more cocoons throughout the ship began to crack open. The Vorthani were waking up, and the galaxy would never be the same. News of the Vorthani awakening spread through coalition space faster than light. Emergency sessions were called on every major world. Military fleets prepared for the worst. Ancient records spoke of the Vorthani as unstoppable forces of nature, who had once ruled the galaxy through fear. Back on Nexus Prime space station, panic filled the corridors. Dr. Veltara worked frantically with her science teams trying to understand what they were facing. Commander Braktor demanded immediate military action, convinced the awakened predators would destroy everything. We must strike first, Braktor declared at an emergency meeting. These creatures are apex predators. They will see us as prey to be hunted. Ambassador Zilthek slithered nervously around the conference room. The Hegemony Council is terrified, he admitted. Our oldest records speak of the Vorthani as demons who devoured entire civilizations. But Kixandra, the tentacled navigator who had believed in Tejo from the beginning, spoke up with her gentle voice. Perhaps we should wait to see what they actually want before we attack them. What they want is obvious, Dr. Veltara said. her crystal body flashing with agitated light. They want to reclaim their dominance over the galaxy. Meanwhile, aboard the ancient Vorthani ship, something unexpected was happening. Korthmak was not planning conquest or destruction. Instead, he was studying human culture and biology with fascination. "Show me more about your species," Korthmak asked Teho as they sat in the ship's vast library. The ancient predator's massive frame looked strange, surrounded by holographic displays of human history. Teho had been living on the Vorthani ship for 2 weeks now, serving as translator and cultural guide. The other Coalition crew members had returned to Nexus Prime to report their findings, but Teho had chosen to stay. "What would you like to know?" Teho asked. "You developed technology very quickly," Korthmak observed. "From first fire to space travel in only thousands of years." "How?" Teho thought carefully before answering. "We shared knowledge. When one human learned something new, they taught it to others. Each generation built on what came before." Korthmak nodded slowly. "Vorthani were different. Each hunter was solitary. We learned alone, fought alone, lived alone, made us perfect individual predators, but..." He paused. "Perfect individuals do not create civilizations." Around them, other Vorthani had awakened from their long sleep. They were all massive, powerful beings with natural armor and deadly claws, but Teho had learned they were also intelligent, curious, and surprisingly gentle with smaller creatures. The awakened Vorthani treated Teho with respect and interest. They asked him endless questions about human society, technology, and culture. They were amazed that such small, weak creatures had become so successful. "Your species fascinates us," said Yathara, a female Vorthiani, whose armor was decorated with intricate patterns. "You have no natural weapons, yet you conquered your entire planet." "We used our minds," Teho explained. "And we worked together." "Yes," Korthmak agreed. "Pack hunting." We had forgotten its power. Back on Nexus Prime, Professor Park Soo-jin had arrived from Earth. Teho's old teacher brought with her a team of human scientists and diplomats. She was determined to help establish peaceful relations between the Vorthani and the rest of the galaxy. "Where is my student?" Professor Park asked Dr. Veltara when she arrived. "He is with the predators," Dr. Veltara replied coldly. "We assume they have eaten him by now." Professor Park smiled. "You do not know Teho very well. He has a gift for understanding different species. If anyone can communicate with these beings, it is him." Ambassador Zilthek slithered forward. "Professor, you must convince the humans to help us fight these creatures. Your species may be the only one they respect." "Why would we fight them?" Professor Park asked. "Have they threatened anyone?" "They do not need to threaten," Commander Bractor said. "They are apex predators. Threat is in their nature." But Professor Park was not convinced. She had studied her students' reports carefully. The Vorthani had not attacked anyone. They had not demanded territory or resources. They seemed genuinely interested in learning about modern galactic civilization. 3 days later, Korthmak made an unprecedented request. He asked to visit Nexus Prime Station as an ambassador of his people. The Coalition Council was terrified but agreed to the meeting. When Korthmak's shuttle arrived at the station, every security officer was on alert. But the ancient predator came with only a small honor guard and no weapons. Teho walked beside him, serving as translator and guide. The meeting took place in the largest conference room on the station. Representatives from dozens of species attended, all keeping their distance from the massive Vorthani. Korthmak spoke in his careful, broken Coalition standard. "I come with message from my people," he said. "We do not seek to rule again. We seek to learn." "Learn what?" Dr. Veltara asked suspiciously. "How to be part of community," Korthmak replied. "Vorthani were perfect hunters but poor neighbors. We want to understand how species work together instead of alone." Commander Bractor stood up aggressively. "You expect us to believe that? You are apex predators. Hunting and killing is your nature." Korthmak looked at the military commander with ancient, patient eyes. "Yes, hunting is our nature. But hunting does not always mean killing." He gestured to Teho. "This small human taught us something important. His species hunts for knowledge, for understanding, for exploration. These are hunts we can share." Ambassador Zilthek was not convinced. "What guarantee do we have that you will not return to your old ways?" "No guarantee," Korthmak admitted honestly. "But consider this. We chose sleep when we could have chosen conquest. We chose awakening when we sensed kinship, not weakness. Professor Park stood up from her seat. What exactly are you proposing? Partnership, Korthmak said simply. Vorthani have knowledge of ancient galaxy. Science is lost for millions of years. We share this knowledge in exchange for learning about modern civilization. And humans? Professor Park asked. What role would my species play in this arrangement? Korthmak looked at Teho with something that might have been pride. Humans are bridge between old hunters and new galaxy. They think like predators but act like community, perfect ambassadors for understanding. Kixandra moved forward with her tentacle arms. I support this proposal, she said. If the Vorthani wanted to conquer us, they would have done so already. Their willingness to negotiate shows good faith. The debate continued for hours, but gradually, more species began to support the idea. The potential benefits of Vorthani knowledge were too valuable to ignore. Security Chief Woldan surprised everyone by speaking up. I have worked with the human Teho. He showed courage and wisdom in dangerous situations. If the Vorthani respect his species, perhaps we should as well. Finally, the Coalition Council voted to accept the Vorthani proposal. A formal alliance would be established, with humans serving as primary liaisons between the ancient predators and modern galactic civilization. As the meeting ended, Korthmak approached Teho. You have done well, youngkin, he said. Your species will help bridge the gap between old ways and new. Teho looked around the room at all the aliens who had once mocked him. Now they watched him with respect and perhaps a little fear. The small human had become the key to the most important alliance in galactic history. What happens now? Teho asked. Korthmak smiled, showing his rows of sharp teeth. But somehow the expression was not frightening anymore. Now we hunt together, he said. Old predators and young predators seeking the greatest prey of all. What is that? Knowledge, Korthmak replied. Understanding. The secrets of the universe itself. Outside the station windows, the stars shined with new possibilities. Somewhere among them, ancient Vorthani ships were awakening from their million-year sleep. And on a small blue planet called Earth, humanity was preparing to take its place as the galaxy's second apex predator species. The hunt for knowledge had begun, and it would be the greatest adventure in galactic history.